Good evening, everyone. We continue our study in the book of Job, and we have arrived in Job chapter 8. Just a little bit of background to get into this chapter. It is important for us to realize that Job has, in fact, being a blameless, upright, God fearing, and shun evil man, rich and famous. And it's an example to all in all lands. And then he suddenly succumbs to a loss of all his property, wealth, children, and his health. And now he has boils from the foot, the sole of his foot to the scalp of his head. And his friends have arrived to talk to him. We had the first friend who actually came to see him. And the first friend is Eliphaz. And as Eliphaz began his discourse with Job, he inherently implies that Job really have sinned. Otherwise, all these bad things should not have befallen him. And Job maintains his innocence. We now come to his second friend, and the second friend in verse 1 is Bildad the Shuhite. So it's Bildad uh, and Shuhi. That's the name Shuhite. It's from a place. And it is interesting to find that in this second discourse, Bildad actually supports Eliphaz's statements and he makes it very direct and plain. Now remember that back in chapter 3, Job is saying, I wish I wasn't born. He cursed the day that he was born. He thinks that God has left everything to the course of nature. He cannot understand why he, as someone who is innocent, someone who is God fearing, someone who has done everything right, is now suffering all these, what he would say, evil. And of course, Eliphaz says that you have sinned. And now comes Bildad. And let's see what Bildad has to say. Bildad continues this discourse and says, how long will you say these things or such things? Uh, and it says that the words of your mouth be a mighty wind. Now, this idea of a mighty wind or a strong wind, it comes in to say that no, as Job speaks, the things that comes out of his mouth is like wind and it is strong. These are words that comes out and they're strong, and they are strong because he maintains his innocence. And he says he doesn't understand why these things are happening to him. God must have left all these things to the course of nature. And that has been Job's defense thus far. But Bildad is saying, what's happening? These words that you're saying, they're just like wind that's been blowing, and it's very strong words that you're using. And verse 3 says, does God pervert justice? Or does the Almighty pervert what is right? Now, what is right is actually justice. So that you know this word justice, uh, this is just judgment, and justice would also refer to the justness of God, right? The justness of God. God is just. Why would God pervert what is just? What does this mean is in the eyes of the readers, you will find that why would God not bless the just or the righteous. Because the principle is that God will punish the wicked and God will bless the righteous. And so, if God does not bless the righteous, then God would be seen as perverting justice. Perverting justice comes in the way of bending, bending the straight. Now, this word bending the straight means he's making the straight look crooked. That's what's in the Hebrew. Will God bend what is right? That would be the English word of perversion here. Bending, making crooked would be the way that it is being described. And of course, Bildad is now saying, Bildad is saying, if your sons sin against God, then God would have turned them over to the power of their wrongdoing. They have transgressed, right? Transgressed, meaning done wrong to God. That is what Bildad is saying. They have died because of their sins. That's the view of Bildad. Now, notice Bildad and Eliphaz is not saying anything different, except Bildad is now giving evidence. He's showing evidence. Remember, at the end of chapter 6, you find that chapter 6 and 7, chapter 7, you find that uh, Job is saying, don't say all these things if you don't show me some evidence. And now Bildad is showing evidence. Look at your sons. Why did they die? They die because they have done wrong, and that's why God has judged their sins. And so in verse 5, Bildad exhorts Job. If you seek God, right? This word is seek. Seek to find. And it also means with an idea of repent. If you seek God and implore the compassion of Shaddai, now implore the compassion is to, I would say, is to seek his favor, right? Implore the compassion, seek his favor. Seek his favor, seek his grace, if you want to put it in a more modern context. And then he says, if you are pure and upright, pure in this case means that uh, he is righteous. If you are righteous, clean, and then it says here, if you are right, this is straight, which means that if you are truly walking on the path of God, means that you have repented. If you are truly there, surely now he will stir himself for you and restore your righteous estate. Now, the estate is his home, his possessions, his children. And restore in this case is from the word shalem, right? Shalem. It is to make complete. Understand, in the Hebrew language, when something is shalem, then the result is shalom. And here we translate this as peace. If there is completeness in the restoration. If his home is made complete, then there will be shalom. So that is how the Hebrew works for us. And if you are truly righteous and you are straight, if you are pure, which is sak, and you are yashar, which is straight, then God will stir himself for you. Now, this word stir himself for you means awaken. God will awaken himself or cause himself to be awake for you and make you complete again. Make you shalom so that you can have shalom. And Bildad says, although your beginning was insignificant, uh, the beginning here would mean the reshit. You would see this word in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. Bereshit. If your beginning, if your first, right? If your first was insignificant, which means that his earlier part of life, and Bildad says your end will be increasing significantly. Now, what do you mean by end in this case? The end here is achare, which is the end part. So your beginning or the start is insignificant, is little. Actually, the word insignificant is little. Then your end will be, well, the word says here is very great. And Bildad is saying, whatever you had before is nothing. Later in life, now in the Hebrew thinking, they would say that the beginning is this life. This would be this life. And then this will be the life to come. So that if you repent, and God will give you more. But we will see in this book of Job that in chapter 34, all these things will come to clarity. That whatever has happened to Job now is nothing like what Bildad and Eliphaz and the rest of the friends are saying, but truly the principle that Bildad is suggesting is really going to happen. Is really going to happen. Verse 8, he says, please inquire of past generations. Because the past generations are things that there are people who understand these things and consider things searched out by their fathers. Now, what is important is for Bildad to tell Job, you see, whatever you are seeing, right, you're seeing at this point in time, and you're saying that God is not entertaining what's happening to man as it is left it to natural means. So look at what has happened in the past. As the fathers have seen, because God works through a long period of time, so that you don't only have one point in time, but you can see all facets of life. Basically, Bildad is telling Job, don't be myopic. Don't be myopic. Just look at what the past fathers have seen in different generations, and God is consistent. Don't look at right now. That is what verse 8 means. Verse 9 says, for we are of yesterday. There is no only, for we are of yesterday, and we don't know much, because our days on earth are like a shadow. Now, this is important for Bildad to say, because the argument of Bildad is actually quite true. It says that we are only of yesterday. Yesterday means just a recent point in time, right? We only have a period of time. God works through long periods of time. And so, as you stand here to see, you can't see the past and the future. So, whatever has happened in the past, ask your fathers. What happened in the previous generations? Our days on earth is just a shadow of a small period. Verse 10, will they not teach and tell you and bring forth words of their mind? Go seek counsel. Because Job says nobody can explain this. Now comes the illustration of Bildad. Bildad then uses the principle of a papyrus. That's a gourmet, a reed, a rush, a papyrus, a gourmet. This is a reed, right? A reed. What is a reed? If you imagine this being the marshes, the marsh waters, the reed would be something that comes up from the marsh. This is a reed. Something that sticks out of the waters, that comes out from the under the water, a reed, right? A reed. Or in Egypt, it's called a papyrus. So it says this: can a papyrus or a reed grow tall without a marsh? And of course, the answer is no. It cannot grow by itself. It needs the marsh to grow. Can the rushes grow without water? Now, the idea of a rush here, this is actually Ahu, and Ahu really is a bulrush. And a bulrush would also be similar to the papyrus. So what we have here is an A and a B. A marsh is water. All right. So it's basically saying, can any of these plants grow without water? These are all water plants, right? Verse 12 says, while it is still green, it will not be plucked or cut down, but yet it withers before any other grass. Now, the verse 12, in this case, the plant here is grass. The reed or the papyrus, it actually dries up before the grass dries up. It means that it doesn't last that long. Suddenly it's just brown, right? Suddenly it just turns brown and it's dried up before grass. Remember, we are still talking about what Bildad is saying to Job. So if you understand how the papyrus comes up and it will just dry up suddenly, so are the paths of all who forget God. Forget means to ignore. It also means to cease to care. And Bildad is suggesting that Job must not fall into this trap. He is disregarding God in his arguments. So Bildad says the paths of all who forget God will just perish, and the hope of the godless will perish as well. Now, godless in this case are those who are, well, what do we say, uh, impious. I think would be a better word. Impious means they do not include God in their practices. Rather than atheistic, these are those people who put God to one side, and these people will perish. This is an A and this is a B. It is like the papyrus, right? It will dry up before grass dries up. This will be the conclusion. Now, in verse 14, he moves on to a different illustration. He says, this person's confidence. Now, the idea of, oh, how would we say, confidence? Uh, I guess you could say this word here would be trust, fatness, uh, hope. I think this would be the idea of confidence. He says his confidence uh, is fragile. Now, this word fragile means can easily snap or break. So that's why the translator uses this word fragile in the English. This person's hope can easily break or cut off, if you like. His trust, now this word trust here, is betok or mittach. This comes from the word betok, which is confidence again, confidence or trust. I think you can see this word, um, the I guess when it says confidence, it would be the act of it or the object of trust. You will find this in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 15, where we have this favorite verse, trust in the Lord with all your heart. And it comes from the same root word, to have confidence. And it says that this person's confidence is like the spider's web. Now, don't think of the spider's web from a science viewpoint, because when science looks at a spider's web, is really strong, considering that it is spun by a little teeny weeny spider, and the strength is many, many hundreds of times stronger than the spider itself. But this is from a man's viewpoint, looking at the spider web, where it is looked as something that you can easily destroy. He depends on his house, but it does not stand. He holds on to it, but it does not endure. This hope or this trust is short lived. Basically, this is an A and this is a B. Verse 16, painting about this house that is going to be built, he says, the house flourishes before the sun, his shoot spreads out over his garden. From a papyrus or a reed moves on to a tree with roots that spans. It says that this tree has his roots wrapped around a rock pile to be more firm. He grasps the house of stones, meaning in between the walls, right? The gaps. And then in verse 18, he says, if he's removed from his place, The word remove from his place comes from the word if he is swallowed. If he is swallowed means he is destroyed. That gives us that picture. If he is destroyed from his place, then it will deny him, saying, I never saw you. Now, this is an imagery. So work with me on an imagery. We have a house with stones. We have a tree. And the tree comes out and it has roots all over the place. And this tree would have been a big tree, but the expression say when it is swallowed, when it's removed from its place, what happens is that the picture that's given is if this tree dies and disappears, right? After a period of time, there is no more. This is what it means. It denies him. I never saw you. It's no more. You can't see the remnants of the tree anymore. That's the picture of verse 18. Behold, this is the joy of his way, and out of the dust others will spring. Meaning, whatever there is, his way would be this tree, right? Not capital H. And so in its place, you find that there will be new trees that will grow in its place because you can't tell the one before. And then it will also die. It will also die. Now we come towards the end of this chapter. In verse 20, Bildad is now saying, look, God will not reject a person of integrity. Uh, this word means a person who is calm, who is complete, right? Uh, who is, how would you say, he would be uh, upright, blameless. That's what this means, upright, blameless. This is in Job chapter 1, verse 1. This is the description of Job. It is also the description of Jacob. And this one you find in chapter 25 in Genesis 25, verse 27. God will never reject a person. Now, this word reject means to refuse. I think we can use that, right? Reject, refuse, um, to cast away. And then he says, nor will he help evil doers. Now, the word help uh, comes from the word, I guess, how should we say? He will not strengthen or he would not hold up. He will not hold up. He will not sustain. He will not support evildoers. All right. So the principle that Bildad, remember, this is Bildad speaking. He's talking about God. He says, if you are a person of integrity, if you are a person who is calm, who is complete, upright, blameless, God will not refuse you or cast you away. But at the same time, he will not support anyone who does evil. And then he suggests he will yet fill your mouth with laughter and your lips with joyful shouting. If you are really this, you will be very happy. And if that is the case, once you are there, then those who hate you will be embarrassed. And the tent of the wicked will no longer exist, will not be there anymore. So it says, if you truly are a person of integrity who is upright, blameless, you will be very happy. You will have the last laugh. I guess you could say this represents the last laugh, because your enemies who is laughing at you will no longer be around. They will be totally embarrassed. But are you? So the question is a very indirect provocation of Job. You are not laughing now. Your enemies are laughing at you. So are you the evildoer, or are you the person who has integrity, who is upright, who is blameless? And so by implication, Bildad points the finger at Job, accusing him that God will not support you because you are suffering right now. So go and seek God and repent. That is the net of chapter 8. And with this, we come to the end of our session today.